force from the beginning.
Everybody, can you hear me? Good morning. How y'all doing today? Good. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Stasia, and I am a speaker for Google, and I'm really excited to spend my morning with you talking about ways that you can make your website work for you. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. I've been in the internet industry for more than 20 years. I started at a tiny agency in the Boston area, hand coding web pages, back when they were brand new, websites were brand new. And then over the next 20 years, I started working for different agencies, small businesses, large businesses, everything from website development, application development, SEO, pay-per-click marketing, email marketing. So I've pretty much done all of the different pieces of internet marketing that you as business owners will work on. So that's why Google has invited me to go around the country and talk to businesses about the things that you can do to help your businesses grow and thrive online. I am with a company or a division at Google that is entirely focused on helping small businesses. So if you want to learn more, come up and chat with me afterward. And we have a 1:30 session as well that will be talking about all of the different tools that you can use from Google to help yourselves grow and thrive online as well. But for the first hour, I'm going to be focused on your website and how you can use that and how you can apply different techniques to make it work for you. So, question for the audience. How many of you already have a website? Quite a few. Okay. Ma'am, why do you have a website? So people can find your business. Who else? Why do you have a website? To display your products and services. Somebody over here. Yes, why do you have a website? To educate our customers. Awesome. So one of the things, so you three are actually ahead of many of the curve for many of small business owners that I've worked with, because you can actually give me a reason. I won't do the hands of shame, but I am quite certain that there will be some people in the room who will say, well, it's because it's, you know, I need a website, that's the thing. Or you build it because it's like my business card on the web. But a website can be so much more than just a presence. It can be so much more even than just saying, this is where I want people to be able to find me. I want you to start thinking about using your website as a tool that can help you grow and thrive, that can save you resources, and that can help drive more business. So we'll be talking about different ways that you can do that today. So whether you've had a site for 10 years or you're just getting started today, there are things that you can keep in mind that will help your site do better. And first of all, I want you to ask yourself, is my website goal-oriented? In other words, does my website help me accomplish a task? Does it help me do something? Next, is your website intuitive? And when I first started building websites in the 90s, one very common conversation I'd have with a new client is they're like, great, Stasia, we're here and we want to build a website. It's going to be so wonderful, and I want it to be different than any other website on the internet. And in fact, that's actually probably the wrong approach when you're thinking about developing your website presence. You do not want to have people think about how to use your website and find things and navigate. You want people to get to your website and be able to quickly and easily find the information that they're looking for. So don't think about your website as this experience where people are going to have to try to figure out how to get there. You want them to be able to get there as a no-brainer and use the site and get the information that they're looking for. Third, is it organized? I'll be talking about different ways that you can organize the information on your website to help you support your business goals. Fourth, we'll talk about how your website can be useful and also functional. I'll talk about the differences between those two. And then last but not least, I'll talk about how you can help your website be more search friendly. Because even if you apply all of these ideas, all of these concepts to your site, at the end of the day, if the web pages are not findable by Google and other search engines, then it's kind of for nothing, because that's how the majority of people are going to find your website when they're doing those searches. Okay, so we've got a lot to cover. Are you ready to get started? All right, let's do this thing. So let's start by talking about a website being goal-oriented. So we know that building the website is an important first step, but again, it can be so much more useful than just being your online home or your online brochure. With a little bit of planning in advance, your website can help support your business goals right out of the gate. But the first step before you can actually make those changes or start that process is actually defining what those goals are. So start by asking yourself again, well, all right, so I have a website, but why? What is it that I want it to do? And there can be a variety of goals that every business has. It could be everything from, I would really like to build brand. That is, let's see, anybody here have a dog walking business in San Diego? There's usually one. All right, give me a small business example. Somebody here, raise your hand. Anybody? You, sir, do you have a small business? He's looking at me with the personal training. Awesome, and I'm just about to get my ACE certification, so I'm super excited. Yeah, you're right. I'm so excited. I have my test next week, so I'll come and talk to you later. So she's a personal trainer here in San Diego, and if I had just moved to San Diego and I was looking for a personal trainer, I don't know anybody here yet. I don't know the names, I don't know the clubs, I don't know the different businesses that can help me. So my search on Google would probably be very generic, like personal trainer in San Diego. And if that was the case and your website came up, that's great. But wouldn't it be better if I even knew your name? Like, that is the woman that I want to train with. That's the business that I wanted to work with. And so that is what you can work on with your website to start building up that brand equity, that brand exposure, so that when I think I need someone to help me work out, then I think of you and your name. And particularly if your business is in a relatively crowded space, if there are lots of personal trainers, if there are lots of dog walkers, if there are lots of landscaping companies that you're competing against, you might want to start working on building up that brand equity. The other thing that you can do with your website is working on generating leads. So if you're in a business where you're selling a bigger product or service, or let's just say, tell me your name? So I'm interested in getting a package with Jessica, but before I sign up for a year of personal training, I probably want to meet her or try out one of the workouts to make sure I like it. So her website might get me in the door, but it's not necessarily likely that I'm immediately going to go to her e-commerce section, give her my credit card, and then buy a year's worth of personal training. So I want you to start thinking about your website as the initial handshake, as the way for you to generate leads. How many of you have bought something big in the last year, like a car or a computer or a laptop? A bunch of you, right? Can I ask you, what's the first thing that you did? Did you go into a store to start? No? What did you do? Did you do a search online? Yes, so she did a search online to get information. And that is how the majority of consumers are conducting business these days. Before anyone ever goes into a store or meets with a personal trainer or talks to somebody on the phone, the first thing that they're going to do is visit the website. So you need to start thinking about that website as that first interaction with a potential customer. Next thing that you can do with your website, obviously, is actually make the sale. If you have a business model where you can sell directly on the website, that's great. But one thing that you want to keep in mind is make it as easy as possible to complete that sale. One thing that lots of businesses struggle with is they want to use their websites and the relationships to collect as much information as they can. Because that you've got them in the door and you're like, well, if I know this stuff, I can send them better offers. I can give them better information. I'll understand them more. So you have to try to find that right balance. Resist the temptation to ask too much of your potential customers right out of the gate and just help them make the sale. As your relationship with them grows, you can get more information. So there's one very well-known retailer that you've all probably heard of, and you can literally buy something in a single click. You buy it and you're done. And so your goal is to make the process of checking out on your website as simple as just doing that 1 or 2 simple steps. And that's going to help your website work for you. Another thing that you can do is use your website to re-engage customers. So someone who's done business with you in the past, you want to give them a reason to come back to you. And in order to do that, your website needs to be something that you're continually working on and building and growing and improving. A website is not a set it up and forget about it kind of deal. You have to be thinking about, well, what information, what resource, what can I add to my website that would give people a reason to return and a reason to come back to me? For every business in the room, the answer is going to be a little bit different. But if you start thinking creatively about what people are asking for and looking for, you can all create resources out of your websites. Another thing that you can do with your site is you can attract employees. So that's a good place for adding job listings and explaining the culture of your company and why it's a good place to work. And you can also provide support. Do any of you have situations where people or customers call your business and they usually ask the same sets of questions every time they call? I know a lot of you are going to have that. And so one of the things that you can do is figure out, all right, well, I know that these are the things that people are always asking me for. This is the PDF that people are always asking me to send to them. And then you can start saying, all right, I'm going to use my website as a way to streamline that process and provide the information that they're looking for. So those are high level, some of the things that you can do to make your website work for you. So start by thinking, as you get into the process, first of all, who is your audience? It's really useful to sort of define a persona. That is a sort of a profile or multiple profiles of the persons who will be your potential customers and visiting your website. And it's easy to sort of come up with a kind of very basic profile, like, oh, my target audience are men in this age bracket in this part of the country. Well, see if you can take it a little bit farther than that. See if you can start thinking more about who they are and what their interests are. Maybe you're in a particular area where everyone likes a sports team, and so maybe you can approach stuff from an angle, you can actually write content that integrates that. Maybe that there's something happening locally in the town that you can use to reference. But you want to start thinking about the people, the individuals who will be visiting your website and coming up with ways to actually make your website speak to them. Your website should not, in most cases, be written for the entire world. Your website is targeted to your audience and what they like and who they are and their interests and their hobbies. So think about everything that you can about your particular audience and make sure that your website speaks to them. Now, another thing to think about is measuring success. And this is one area where lots of business owners, you kind of stop because it gets more difficult. I mean, the first reason it gets more difficult is that lots of business owners, they build a website, but they don't actually define the goals concretely enough to measure it. But my challenge is that if you spend all this time and money and resources and effort building a website that you're proud of for your business, if you are not tracking and measuring whether or not it's helping you achieve business goals, you have no idea if that investment was worthwhile. And you don't have the information that you need to actually make meaningful, data-driven improvements to that website. It's kind of like if you have a motorcycle or bicycle and you're making modifications to help that bike go faster. Well, if you didn't know how fast it went in the beginning, you've got no idea to measure whether or not you're going faster after you put in that $500 part. So think of it in the same way with your website, that you have to identify what it is supposed to do and how you're going to measure it. And there are lots of ways to do that, from the very unscientific to the really specific. One thing that you can do if you're just getting started, and it's anecdotal, but it has values. Just talk to people. Ask your customers what they like, what they liked about the site, what they didn't. Try to figure out where they might be getting hung up. At the very least, by talking to your customers, you can get ideas about different things that you can try, different functionality or different content that you can add to your website. And then there are other things that you can do to track it. For example, I'm pretty sure most of you have heard of Google Analytics. It is free software from Google. It's available at google.com/analytics, and it'll tell you about visitor behavior to your website. And so you can see what they're looking at and how long they're spending on your website and where they're coming from. And it can give you lots of great information about how they're using that site. Another thing that you can do if you advertise is you can look at the reports to see what types of searches are bringing people to your website. You can also use a tool called call reporting. And basically the way that works is that you can get a phone number that's assigned to your advertisement that rings into your main number. So you can track how many people are actually finding you by calling that trackable phone number and getting to your business. The point is, you need to find a way to actually define, track, and measure your goals, because otherwise you'll have no idea if your website is working for you or not. So here is an exercise for everyone. You don't need to do this now, but I want you to, if you have a pen, you can write it down and think about it. Think about your website now, and you might already have a goal for it. But now think of another one. Your website can and should have more than one goal. What is it that you want it to do for your business? And when you think about this goal, I want you to be specific. Specifically, I want it to do this thing. I want my website, for example, with Jessica, to collect their name and their email address and optionally their phone number so I can follow up and schedule a time for them to come in and see my gym or to meet with them for a consultation. Whatever it is for your business model, think about that goal. Make sure it's realistic. It would be really nice to say, all right, well, my goal is I want to retire next year. Maybe, but start thinking more concretely that here's my website and I want it to do these 3 things or this one thing that I can track and measure today. And last but not least, figure out then what mechanism, what tool you are going to use to actually count and measure. And then use that data to go in and make improvements to your website, because it'll tell you what's working and what's not, but then you as the business owner, it's up to you to take that information and then try something different, try to make an improvement. Now, it can be hit or miss. You might look at a report and say, okay, I need to fix this part of my website because I'm losing lots of people here, and you may make a change. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You should be constantly testing and tweaking and looking for ways to make improvements on your site. Let's talk about the next one. Let's talk about being intuitive. And so, in other words, you don't want people to actually have to figure out what it is that they need to do on the site. They should get there and they should naturally be able to take that next step without thinking about it. So it's the process of them getting there and then filling out the form or finding the resource in the help section that you've set up. And so let's start by looking at some of the typical elements of a website so we can figure out areas to make it intuitive. So let's start with web design. You want to have an intuitive design. And what do we mean when we talk about that? Well, it's usually the graphic template. That's what people are thinking about. And sometimes it's called the skin of the website, but basically it's the pretty picture that all the content falls within. But there are lots of aspects to that. There are the graphics, there's the color choices, there's the fonts and the font sizes, there is the functionality and the layout. But when you look at your website design, make sure that it is very intuitive for people to get around. As an example, most websites have a logo in the top left corner. And most website visitors expect that when they click on that logo, it will take them back to the home page of the website. So you want to start looking for these common things that fall across most websites and make sure that your website has them too, so that visitors don't get frustrated when they can't get to where they're trying to go. Most websites have a universal top and bottom called the header and the footer of the website. You want to make sure that your header and footer is consistent on every web page so people don't have to figure out or refigure out how to get around on every different page of the site. You also want to think about, well, what is the most important thing that I want people to do when they get to my website? Is it I want them to call this phone number? Is it I want them to send an email to this address? Do I want them to get directions to my store? And make sure that that information is front and center. If the phone number is the most important thing, put it up there in the header. So that's something that they will see at the top of every single web page when they get through that website. So just think about how people will be visiting your site and what you can do to minimize or eliminate any barriers for them actually using the site. Now, the website design, when you look at it, it's typically going to have attractive and consistent graphics, a simple navigation, a website search. And usually that search is at the top right corner of the site. You can move it, but just make sure that for any of these pieces, if somebody gets to your website, it's easy for them to find it. Another thing that you want to look at is having well-written and readable text. One thing that I've seen, and I'm not going to do the, all right, I'm not going to out myself on how old I am, but I will tell you that I'm recently of the age that when I have my phone, I have to do this to actually read the text on that phone. I need reading glasses very badly. I have them on my desk, but I just don't like putting them on yet. I'm getting there. But if I visit a website where the font is large enough and there's enough contrast between the background color and the color of the font text, it's a lot easier for me to read it. So just look at your website, from a very clinical perspective. How easy is it for someone to actually read the information that is on the web pages? Another thing to think about is adding useful tools. I'll talk about that more when we get to the functionality section. But again, don't think about your website as just your online postcard or your online brochure. Think about your website as a viable tool to help you achieve these business goals, whatever they may be for your particular business. Now, this is not a last but not least slide, but today's session is not focused on mobile, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. Because as of 2016, more than half of web searches are now happening on mobile devices. It used to be when I first started building websites that I would meet with a client and we would talk about their website and they would say, okay, yeah, we know we need a mobile version of the site, but let's just get the main site done first and then we'll think about mobile later or we'll launch that later. We really can't do that now because if you do that, you're losing more than half of your potential visitors. Your website from the start needs to work on all of these devices. So there's good news with this. The majority of website templates now, if you're using one of those programs that already have websites that you just customize, the majority of them are already optimized for mobile devices. It's called responsive web design. A responsive web design can basically adjust its format depending on the size of the screen that somebody is using. So that's the good news, that a lot of it's done for you, but you still, when you build or edit your site, make sure, if you make a change and you look at it on your laptop or your computer and you're like, okay, that looks great, don't forget to look at it on a mobile device as well. A lot of people are not in the habit yet of actually treating the mobile experience as being just as important, if not more important, than the desktop experience. So half of searches are happening on these mobile devices. So what can we do to optimize for it? First of all, focus on the navigation. Make sure that it is easy to click on those buttons, that they're spaced wide enough that you don't have to struggle to click on those links. Make sure that the font is large enough that you can read it on those screens. You might see on some different websites where they actually have a different variation of the site. So depending if you're looking on a mobile device, the navigation is actually bigger or simpler to use. You just want to make sure that it works well for your business on a mobile site. if a visitor is coming to your site, the first page that they're probably going to see on mobile is the home page. And in many cases, it's interesting. If we look at the research, people who are searching on a mobile phone, even if they're in the exact same scenario as far as time crunch, there's this impression, there's this idea that we're in a hurry. It's a psychological thing that we're on a phone and time is of the essence. So your website needs to load and show the information very, very quickly to them. So treat your home page like it's the only page that people are going to see today. And again, lead, don't bury your lead. Keep your most important information at the top. Another thing that you want to think about is making it easy to complete tasks like filling out forms and optimizing for usability. That is, making it easy to get around. Speed is not a bullet here. I should probably add that next time I do this presentation. Mobile speed is one of the most important aspects of your website as well. The average person now will give a mobile site about 3 seconds to load. After that, you're going to start losing your folks because people will find that it's easier to hit the back button and get to a different website rather than wait for it. They estimate that for every second you make a customer wait, your conversions are going to drop by 20%. It's pretty huge. So one tool that you can use to actually test your mobile speed is called Google's Test My Site tool. The URL is testmysite.thinkwithgoogle.com. And it's a very simple tool. You go to the web page, you put your website in, and it will tell you about your speed. And it will give you some suggestions for ways that you can improve your speed. But this should absolutely be part of every business owner's to-do list, is making sure that they have a great website that works and looks good on mobile devices and loads as quickly as you can. So I could talk the whole session about mobile, but I'm going to keep going because we have more to do. Once again, for anyone, that URL is testmysite.thinkwithgoogle.com. All right, so let's talk about the next thing that you can do to make sure that your website works for your business, and that is keep it organized. A great website is well organized so that people have a clear path to finding whatever it is that they're looking for. And one way to do it is to start with something called an information architecture. That sounds really complicated, but you don't need to be a programmer or an architect to actually create an information architecture. It's just a fancy word for a plan. And so let's start by looking at an example here. So in my example business, it is an online store that sells uniforms, sports uniforms. So our target audiences would be schools and sports clubs and things like that. And so we are all working together. We all started this company together, and we're building our website, and we need to organize it. So we might say, all right, how are we going to organize it? Let's do it by sport. And so we'll have a section on our website for basketball, and we'll have a section on our website for football, and we'll have a section on our website for baseball. So that's one way to approach it. But with websites, there's never one way to do it. There's always other ways to do it. So who's got another idea? How else could we organize this information? Give me an idea. By age? By what? Teams, yes. Thank you. So, all right, true story. I was a drummer for 13 years. I'm actually a little deaf in one of my ears. So my poor neighbors had to listen to Tom Sawyer over and over and over again. I know, right? So, yeah, so teams, we could organize them by teams. How else could we organize our website?
A map.
By map. So different parts of the country. So you could order them or go in and see, maybe if there's a showroom where you could see.
Instead of an organigram?
Yep.
A map, figures.
So actually present them as a graphics or maps of your images? Okay, we could try that from a visual perspective. How else can we organize the information? Yes? His and hers, gender. We could have uniforms for men and uniforms for women. We could have uniforms that were for semi-professional clubs. We could organize them by the quality and the price. We could organize them by the age groups. Basically, any way that we can start segmenting our target audience, whether that's by gender or teams or sport or location, we can think about different ways to organize this website. And ideally, when someone gets there, there's a way for them, no matter what path makes sense, for them to find the information. So no, your challenge is to think about your business. And you might be thinking, Stacia, I'm a small local business. I sell this one thing. I don't know how to organize it. There's always going to be more than one way for us to present this online. You've always got more than one way to position a product or a service. And so if you can start thinking creatively about how your customers come to you, what they want, what they need, what they're looking for, you can help organize your website in a way that helps them connect and understand that you have a product or service that is what they're looking for. Okay, so let's talk about some tips for organizing. First of all, when you are doing it on your site, use short, descriptive names and labels. And that applies not only to the different sections, but also to the pages in your website. So again, we won't do the hands of shame, but I'm going to guess that there's at least one website in the audience where if I went to your home page and I looked at the page title, it would say home. And that is what a lot of websites do. But if I go to your website, right, and I go to your homepage, and the description of your homepage is home, that doesn't tell me anything about your business, right? So for all of you, start thinking about your website, whether that's the navigation or the page titles, the words on the pages, the titles on the pages, that you are describing your business every place that you can. And the thing about search engines especially is that it's a computer program. So you've got human visitors and you've got your web bot visitors as well. But they're not like witty and pithy. They're not like, they don't necessarily get the joke. They're looking for keywords. So what you want to do is think about, here are the keywords that describe my business, my products, and my services. And I want to make sure that that is presented as prominently as I can, because that helped your human visitor say, okay, I'm looking for a personal trainer, and oh look, personal trainer in San Diego. It also helps Google, the algorithm, say, I'm trying to help Stacia find a list of websites that would match her search for personal trainer, and oh look, this website distinctly, clearly describes that this is the service that she offers, so this would probably be a good fit for those search results. Now, another thing is to think about your visitors and how would they be using the site, what would they be looking for. And again, once you've identified all of these things, all of the most important information, make sure that you have that up there in the top nav. Again, think about your header as that prime real estate, as a place where you really want to help people find the answers that they're looking for. Okay, so let's talk about another thing that you can do to make your website work for your business, and that is be useful. And I'm going to focus specifically on interesting content. How many of you folks updated your website today? None. Okay. And you know what? Because you're here, you're busy. And again, thank you all for being here today. I know it's hard to take time out of running your business to sit and listen to people talk about how to run your business. But here is my next challenge to every business owner in the audience. Get yourself in the habit, on a schedule for updating your website. And maybe that's not every day. Maybe that's once a week, or once every 2 weeks, or once a month. But with anything with web marketing, the more you put in, the more you are going to get out of it. So the more information that you add to your website, the more authority, the more relevant it is going to be in Google's mind when the algorithm comes through and looks at those web pages, and also to your human visitors when they come and when they're looking for an answer, when they need to find something, and hopefully your website has that information that they're actually looking for. So when I talk about content, what do I mean? Well, we usually think about text, and that's true, but there are actually, I'll talk about 3 very useful types of content: text, images and video today. And they're all different types of content. If, for example, if you had a bakery, maybe you had text information with the address and your hours of operation, but you might also have a photo gallery that shows all of the beautiful cakes that you could make. If you were a landscaping company, maybe you would have content on your website that showed sort of a frequently asked questions about how to fix problems in your lawn that you can do yourself before you call a company. If you have a product that you ship out to people, maybe you have videos on your website that are unboxing videos. Do you know what those are? I didn't realize just how popular they were. It's a really, really popular format. Apparently 1 in 5 consumers has watched this now. It's a video where you go in and watch somebody take a product out of the box and set it up and start using it. So that's another idea that you can all add to your website. So we'll talk about the 3 different types of content today. So let's talk about best practices for text. And so again, when you are writing content for your website, you want to use important keywords. Now here's an exercise for every business owner in the audience. I want you to think about a Google search. I want you to think about a potential customer. And if they went to Google and they were looking for your business, what would they type in to find you? And this is going to be a list that you will build and grow on and use as you develop and improve your website. So what you'll do is you'll take this list of words and phrases and you will make sure that your website has all of those words and phrases in the content. And that doesn't mean go in and paste it in 500 times, word, 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 word. It means that, okay, I've identified these 20 themes, these searches that people might do to connect them to my business. And now I want to make sure that my website naturally includes content that talks about these important words and phrases. You can go ahead now and do an inventory. Make that list and go look at your website. And if you don't see that content in there, that's one of the easiest ways for you to identify gaps, an easy place where you can start creating content and helping Google understand what your business is about. And hopefully getting people to, when you add that content, it will help people be more likely to find it in the search results. Another thing that you can do, particularly if you've got a lot of content on your website, is to incorporate bulleted lists. Those often help with readability, viewability, especially on those mobile devices. And again, lead with important information and publish as frequently as you can. Get in that habit, get on that schedule, and update your website as much as you can. It does not have to be the Great American Novel. Your update could be a photograph of a great project that you just completed for a client. It could be a before and after photograph of your client who did personal training with you for 6 months and she's so happy because she's gone down 3 sizes or she's got great muscles or whatever it is. Think about your business, think about your target audience and develop content for them. Yes, a question in the back. I'm sorry, you're going to have to yell. Yeah, that's a great question. Blogs are fantastic ways to update your website. The only caveat with that is make sure that the blog is actually part of your main site. Because if you have a blog that is separate from your website, Google's actually going to treat that as a separate web property. So if you're looking for an SEO, a search engine optimization benefit, you want to have your website part of that blog as well. The more websites you have, the more work you have because you're basically promoting all of these different separate websites. But that's exactly what I do. For my website, there's no one right way to do this, but for my website, I actually use what would be officially blog software, but you can use it to make web pages, and it's very easy to make those updates with that software as well. Okay. Let's talk about the next one, images. An image can speak 1,000 words. So if you have a beautiful product or service, if you have something that you can better to show than tell, get those photos on the site. And here are some things to help you be more successful with those images. First of all, it seems obvious, but you'd be surprised. Make sure that they're focused and high quality, because if I go to the website and the picture's lousy, you might actually be doing yourself more harm than good. The second thing that you want to think about is, are they complementary of the site design? Do they fit in well? Another thing is looking and making sure that the images are authentic. Have you guys been to a website and you've seen a stock photo, and you can smell a stock photo a mile away, right? And you know what? There are situations where you need a stock photo. But at the end of the day, sorry Jessica, you're my example today. If I was looking for a personal trainer, I want to see real pictures of real clients and real success stories, and not pictures of models with big muscles. I want to see what your business can really do for me. And so it's okay to be authentic. It actually gives you more credibility in most cases on your website. Make sure that you have permission to use those photos, so it's easy to do an image search and be like, that would be the perfect picture. But you need to have permission to use them on your site. And another thing to keep in mind is make sure that they are the right size and format. And this impacts a few things. Here's an example. So I'm going to guess that every single person here, every single person here has a phone, and just about all of your phones have pretty nice cameras already built into them. If I took a photo, the chances are, based on your settings, that I could easily get a 1 or 2 megabyte file. What that means is that the image is big. And if you put that 2 megabyte image embedded on your web page, even if you use the code to shrink it down to be the right size visibly, it's still a big file. And what happens is that it slows down your web pages, because slow internet connections have to take time to load all of those megabytes to get that image to show. So another thing that you want to do is not only do the dimensions look right, but make sure that you are optimizing the size of your images so that you don't slow down your web pages. That is very important to make your website work for you, because again, if the page takes a long time to load, the easiest thing for someone to do is to hit back and find a different website. Yes, ma'am? So what is the magic number? So, okay, you ask any web developer out there, they'll give you another number. Depending on how many images on the page, I always try to keep my images like 100K or less. But don't write that down, because it depends. If I have 500 images on that page, even if they're 100K, that's still going to be a long time to load. So one of the ways that you can test this is to use that mobile-friendly test that I talked about at testmysite.thinkwithgoogle.com. And you can go and use that tool to test your speed on mobile devices. And that's one scientific way to actually look at it. So just think about keeping it as efficient and as small as you possibly can. All right, another thing is alt text. That means alternative text. For people who are using browsers that don't show images, or for people who have visual impairments, one way that they can use the internet is actually to replace images with text. And for every image that you put up there, you have the option to add, and it's not a caption. A caption is separate. Alt text is actually in the code behind the image, but it is useful. If you're using a content management system, you will typically see the option to add alt text. Do fill that out. And again, be descriptive with the words that you put in. This is a photograph of me training X person, blah, blah, blah. You want to let them know and use those keywords as naturally as you can. All right, so let's talk about the next type of content, videos. And how many of you have, has anyone here not used YouTube? Right, exactly. So let me see if I can read the stat. It is that collectively, every single day, there it is, the font is small. I want to make sure I had this right, but every day, more than 1 billion hours of video is watched on YouTube. Can you even wrap your head around that? That's an astonishing amount of time that people are going to spend watching videos. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I will tell you anecdotally, this is how she navigates her life. Everything from picking the outfits that she's going to wear to how she's going to do her nails or her hair. Everything she looks for an answer generally starts with YouTube. And so this is another important type of content for every business owner to start thinking about and implementing on your website. And one framework to think about video content is to consider the 3 C's. First of all, think about video content as a way to start a conversation, so that the video should inspire people to ask questions or to want to learn more or to follow up and get more information. You can write a description for the video that gives people prompts to sort of get that conversation moving. Another thing to keep in mind is to use videos to make connections. Think about your video content not just as a resource on your site, but also as a social media platform. This is a way for you to start getting people to share your products and your services and the insights that you offer. And again, it does not have to be a huge production with a film crew that comes in and makes a fancy video. It can be something that you make on your phone. You make pretty good videos with your phone these days. But as long as you know something about your industry, your business, your products and your services, and you all do, you have content that you can put on your website, on YouTube, on a channel that can help your visitors find information that they're looking for. And last but not least, think about videos as a way to encourage conversions. It doesn't mean that your video should be a hard sales tool, but the video should then, very gently show them what, if they wished, what that next step would be. Naturally lead them into the next part of that process. So when I get there, I'm informed, I'm entertained, I have my answers. The answers to my questions are taken care of, but I also know that if I wished, I know what the next step would be if I wanted to contact you. Okay, so let's go to the next one, functionality. And by functionality, this is where we get a little more in depth with our site. So we've talked about the content that we could have and the layout, but now let's talk about things that your website can do for you. So does anybody here have an online tool that they have with their site? Not, we got a couple. What kind of tool do you have?
I have a songwriting site.
Oh, cool.
And there's tools to help songwriters.
That's fantastic. He has a songwriting website, and he's got tools to help songwriters create a song or find a place to market them.
For prompting.
Yeah, for prompting them to, it's fantastic. So he is using, that's a great example of him identifying a need for his target audience and then using his website to help support them. And so for all of you, I want you to start thinking about those customers. Remember that audience profile that we did in the very beginning? Think about your target audience who's coming to your website. And then think about why they're there and what it is that they are trying to do. And then think about what kinds of functionality you can add to your site. And it can be very simple or very complex. Here's an example. It might be as simple as, okay, I really need a site search on my site because I've looked at everything, and now after Stasia's session, I realize that I have so many different options, particularly on a mobile device. People might not be willing to dig through and find that information. Another thing that they might want to add, you might want to add, is simply a form. Maybe you don't have a contact form. You just have an email address. The nice thing about the form is that it's not going to get blocked by a spam filter. That can happen. And you can give them the option to give you more information in that form field rather than just send the email. And you can kind of direct the conversation so they give you the information that you need to take that next step. Another thing that you can do is that if you're considering e-commerce or you're considering selling, you can implement e-commerce on your website and you can develop a custom tool. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So let's go through 3 scenarios. So there's actually, I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and there's actually a small local landscaping company that I love. And they're one of my favorite, they've created one of my favorite small business tools because this literally happens to me every single year. Every year I'm like, okay, my yard looks terrible. I need some mulch. I need some mulch, but I have no idea how much mulch I need. And every year I call them up and I figure out and I talk to them on the phone about how much mulch I need. Well, they have added this great tool on their website that's basically, it's called the mulch calculator. And it gives you this really simple form where you just measure the size of your bed and the depth of your mulch, and it will tell you how much you need to order and then get you right into that order initiation. So it's one way. Now, it doesn't mean I'm still not going to call her because I'm going to be like, all right, well, my bed's kind of crooked. What do I do here? But for some situations, it's going to save that company that phone call and help me get into that process. And even if I do start there and get stuck, I'm calling them, which gets that lead into the door. So think about how you can do that with your customers. What kind of functionality can you build? Here's another one. There's another small business that I work with in Nashville. It's actually my esthetician. She's been waxing my eyebrows for like 15 years. And she used to work at this salon, and she just started her own about a year and a half ago. And she's a one-woman shop. And she brought a lot of clients with her, myself included, but because it's a one-woman shop, she doesn't have anybody to answer the phone. And so what she was doing is doing all of her appointments and then spending every lunch hour, every break, going and checking voicemail and scheduling appointments until finally, about 6 months ago, she's like, you know what? I've identified another place where I can make my website work for me. And what she did is she used one of these reservation platforms. There's lots of them. You'll see them for gyms and salons. But look at your business model and see if there's functionality that you can add to help you with scheduling or managing your business. One little word of, my personal advice there. It's absolutely fine to develop a custom tool, particularly if you have a very specific need. But for many small business owners, you might not have the time or the resources to develop your own custom tool. But one of the things is that you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. There are lots of tools, online platforms out there that can often be integrated right into your website that can help you accomplish these tasks. So one thing you can do is look at your competitors, look at their websites and see how are they doing it, and that can give you ideas for ways that you can streamline your business using your website. All right, and the third one, challenge number 3, it's actually not even really functionality. It's kind of more in the content area, but I think it's worthwhile because it can really save you some time, is thinking about, what issue do I have in the real world? And that's that people keep calling me and asking me the same sets of questions. So one thing that you can do is start keeping a running list of all of the questions that people actually ask you, and then figuring out a way to add that to your website. Maybe if it's a lot, maybe it's this whole knowledge base. Maybe it's just a web page that has frequently asked questions. Maybe it's a PDF that you email. Every time somebody buys this thing, you have it send an email that has all of this information so they don't call you up the next day with all of these questions. So start thinking about the places that are time-consuming for you, where your tasks are repetitive, and figure out how you can use the functionality on your website to make that faster and expedite that process. Okay, last but not least, make sure that your website is search friendly. Again, we've talked about all of these things that you can do to help your website work for your business, but at the end of the day, if a search engine can't find it, it can't do those things. So let's talk a little bit about how this works. So behind the scenes, I want you to think about the internet as being a giant book. And every web page on every website is a page in the book, right? And so Google's job is to go through and read every single web page that exists and basically figure out what it's about, what the meaning, what the words on this page mean, and then stick it in a filing cabinet, which they call the index. This is my analogy. So here's what happens when you all do a search. You go to Google, and most of us, we don't really think about how magic it is. We go in and we type in a word or phrase, and then blip, in a millisecond, we get a web page that has links to all of these results. But what's happened is that Google has actually gone through this index and pulled out all of the web pages, the best matches it can find from the trillions and trillions of web pages that are out there to create this page for you on the fly. So for you as a business owner, your task, your job is to make sure that when Google, the computer program, gets to your website, it understands the pages on your site so it knows where to file them in the cabinet. That's the best way I can, or the best analogy I've come up with so far. So again, think about it in the context of a computer program looking at those pages. Remember, think about those important keywords. Make sure that it's readable. And then there are going to be more than 200 signals that help Google figure out which web pages should be shown in those results. The most important part is going to be that content and making sure that it's relevant. I talked a little bit about mobile. Another important one for mobile searches is the speed of your website. Because again, that is one major criteria for if someone's going to actually visit that website, how quickly that site loads. So here is a search engine results page. I just wanted to point out the pieces. So here at the top, someone does a search. That's called the search query. Here you see at the very top, these are advertisements served up by Google. These are ads that people have opted into and created. This right here is information pulled from a business listing. I'm not talking about that today, but I'd be remiss not to mention it. Every business owner out there, storefront or service area, can create a free business listing. It's you can use our program website, gybo.com, which stands for Get Your Business Online, gybo.com/business, and it'll walk you through the steps to create a free listing. The name of that product is called Google My Business. It is free, and it allows you to control the information that appears across Google Search and Maps that you see in this column. Last but not least on this page, these are the organic results. These are the results that are pulled up naturally by Google's algorithm. And so you as a business owner are trying to get your website to appear in any or all of those three spots. And so let's talk about the organics today because we're talking about your website. But here are some things that you can do to help Google understand and hopefully show your website on those searches. First of all, I've said it before, I'll say it again, make sure it loads. Make sure that the content is useful and relevant. Take that list of keywords, compare it to your web pages, and make sure that you've got it there. If in doubt, if you have a choice, present content in text. It doesn't mean that images don't work or that video content is not valuable. But at the end of the day, Google is a computer program. And so a computer program is able to easily read text. So for anything that you put out there, if it's a video, make sure it has a caption that describes the video. You want that text to help Googlebot figure out what that web page is about. Page titles and descriptions, that's where I was mentioning at the top it says home for your home page. Instead of saying home, it should be Jessica's personal bodybuilding service in San Diego, California. That's what you want to think about. Very descriptive to help people figure out what that business is about. Remember that information architecture. Think about how you're organizing the website. That's also going to help Google, the actual computer program, understand the relationship of the information that you have on the website. And the more carefully you organize and structure those web pages, the more easily it will be able to show it in the results. And last but not least, make sure it works for all browsers and all devices. Okay, I just threw a ton of stuff at you. I know I did. So the good news, I'm glad that y'all took notes. But just to let you know, the organizers of the event will be emailing out a PDF of this presentation, so you will get these slides to reference it, but taking notes is still a really useful exercise. That's why I didn't all stop you, because now you'll know the places to go back in and reference. But let's talk about the things that I want you to do after today. What is next? First of all, start by making your list of goals. Why do you have a website in the first place? What is it that you want it to do for you? Second of all, select an intuitive website design. If you have a site already, go ahead and look at it. See how easy it is to navigate or difficult it is, and figure out where you can make changes and improvements to your site. Third, plan your information architecture. Make that plan and that list. You can go in and reorganize your site. You can add different ways based on those audience profiles, and you can add content that helps them. Think about what types of functionality you can build to help people accomplish the tasks that they're trying to do. And last but not least, be search engine friendly. If you want to learn more, you can visit our website, gybo.com/lessons, and we've got lots of resources for small businesses to learn about a variety of digital marketing topics. And with that, my name is Stasia. Thank you all so much from Google. We really, really appreciate you, and we wish you the very best growing and thriving and succeeding online. I've got about 3 minutes to take your questions, so yay! You can clap. Okay. But now we'll do questions. And I think we have a microphone, because I really can't. We don't have a microphone? Okay, you're going to have to shout at me. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, the question was, how does Google treat Weebly and Wix and Squarespace and WordPress just like any other website? As long as the web pages are accessible to Googlebot, that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to name it, but one of those products is what I use for all of the websites that I make. And it's not that one is inherently any better than the other from an SEO perspective. As long as those pages are readable and are set up with a good website template, you're golden, you're good to go. There's another resource that I want to mention. It's called Google Search Console. It is a free product. The URL for this is at google.com/webmasters. And where that applies to this question is you can use it to actually make sure that Googlebot is not being blocked from the pages of your website. So it's a little bit of a technical tool, but it's very useful in that regard because you don't want to make sure Google can get to your pages. Yes, ma'am. The URL is google.com/webmasters. It is a free product called Google Search Console, and it tells you lots of stuff, but things like, can Google access the web pages on your website? Yes, sir. No, it does not. Does Google have a tool to access the dark web? No.
All right.
It's all good. All right. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to walk outside this room to the right so we don't disturb the next speaker. If you have more questions for me, I'll be right outside, okay? Thanks, guys.